In the world of special needs people, we all need each other. We are one giant community. And if any of you have listened to the welcome video on this site, you know I'm all about community, establishing a social community, a residential community, and employment unique to the special needs individual after graduation from high school, but we have to prepare ahead of time. This is where Rick Silver, our guest today, and I connect. His foundational principle is community and the love and the inspiration that comes out of community so that we can all thrive and emerge, which is the name of his company. So let me introduce you to Rick. Rick Silver, MD and Master of Public Health, is the founder and director of Thrive Emerge. And the whole point of Thrive Emerge is that it's a pioneer of comprehensive wraparound programming to help young adults and their families transition to independence. Rick is a psychiatrist who has been working with neurodivergent patients, meaning people on the autism spectrum disorder and who have ADHD and their families, again, for several decades. Families are important. He is the author, yep, he is the author of Neurospicy. I love that word, Rick. A parent empowerment guide, a parent empowerment guide, moderator for a monthly neurodivergent parent support group, national speaker on neurodivergence, and clinical director of The Village, which we're going to talk about in the second half of this interview. It is a peer-based outdoor treatment program for neurodivergent teens and young adults who are struggling to launch, meaning launching their life after high school, correct?
Yes.
Rick obtained his training from the University of Michigan, the Johns Hopkins School of Hygiene and Public Health, and the University of Maryland Medical School. This is my favorite part. He has three daughters, two of whom are neurodivergent, and has been told he has a touch of ADHD. Rick, that just killed me when I read that.
Around the edges.
Around the edges, don't we
Yeah.
all? Um, I, I have really looked at myself. So, and first of
Yeah.
all, thank you. Thank you for putting us on your schedule because
Oh,
I
Judy,
know how
thank
busy
you.
you are.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So,
Because it was
yes,
great. It was great a couple weeks ago. I
it
loved
was
it.
wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's start with community. Since this is where we both start, talk to us about the importance of community and its opposition living in isolation.
Wonderful. So, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, and I know we'll talk about Thrive in more detail later, but in sort of the inception of Thrive came out of our own experience with our daughters in the public school system and the mental health system and the physical health system. And despite many of the wonderful resources that exist within those different realms, what we were not able to find was the group of people who gave us a sense that they understood us, our community, our larger neurodivergent family. So that wasn't there, and not to fault anybody in particular or point any fingers, but it just was not at a place where those systems had yet developed the sense of how to connect with us, that we who are neurodivergent. So the inception of Thrive was we need to create that. We need to create a place where you can be seen. And at that time, it was just ADHD because there's been a whole development in terms of our involvement with the particularly the higher functioning or higher masking uh, autism spectrum disorder population. But at that time, it was ADHD through the life cycle, it was all inclusive. And it was very important that the families, you mentioned families several times, that they be part of the system too because we're obviously we're created not only in the system of our family but in the system of the larger communities that are there for us in the schools and just generally in our neighborhoods. So our feeling was always, and we've always said this, how do we help one another heal in community, because you cannot heal in isolation. So and without
Yeah.
if you'll forgive me, because I
Yeah.
love to geek out on the science of this stuff. But
Please do.
if we go back and look at, and my cue will be when you start falling asleep, I'll stop doing the geeking out.
Trust me,
So,
I won't. Go ahead.
okay, good. Um, if we look at through the lens of polyvagal theory, okay, which Stephen Porges developed, and Deb Dane has been a big kind of the clinical proponent over that over many years. So the notion here is that, and there's many details on this we can go into, but the idea is that there is a what he calls a social engagement system that's mediated by the brain and particularly kind of conducted by the ventral vagal nerve, which is the key nerve in the parasympathetic nervous system within this polyvagal theory. Okay. And the balancing act to the ventral vagal nerve, which is about calming, restoration, what they say, digestion, and rest and digest, is the sympathetic nervous system, which gets us activated and ready to deal with stress and the demands of the world. Okay. Our ability to balance, engaging with the world in productive, adaptive ways and coming back to self, to center, to ground in order to consolidate what we've experienced and learned. All of that is built into the brain genetically and biologically. Okay. What's this have to do with community? It is a pretty big stretch. Now we're talking about neurons. What's their link here? Because the fascinating thing is that the whole social engagement system is mediated by the ventral vagal nerve, and it involves a number of different cranial nerves that for the infant dictate its behavior in relation to safe caregivers. So, built into your brain from the get go is a biological system that helps you join a community. First is one caregiver at a time. This is how deep it is for us. Community is not like you tack it on at the end of the day and it's all right. Community is in our blood and our bones and our genes. We need each other to live. And what does this caregiver do? Well, we know you think about the baby that you're rocking, right? What happens? The visual contact with the eyes, the rocking, the stimulation, the skin contact being fed at the breast or the bottle. All of these are part of this social engagement system, which teach the young infant's brain how to self-regulate. Okay.
Okay, so
So,
before you go on, a few things I
yeah,
want to just, or I'll forget. So
yeah,
my
please.
nephew, part of the show in the banner,
Yeah,
his biggest issue in socialization was overwhelmed, overstimulated, going into
yes,
crowds. Therefore, getting
yes,
on an airplane was like unbelievable. And
yes.
then I watched a movie over the weekend called Life Animated by Ron Suskind. His younger son, Owen Suskind, had autism and they saw it at age 3. But his mother saw when she ran the sweeper, he would go like this,
Yeah, yeah.
overstimulated, which meant they couldn't be in large groups of people. Keep going.
Yeah, so let's take that observation, but it is perfect to insert at this point. So the neurotypical, whatever that means, right? But sort of the what we don't consider the neurodiverse or what we love to call the neurospicy population. And let me just give credit to the general neurodivergent community for that term. We didn't invent it. I took it from what was out there in the general, neurodivergent community discourse because I thought it was such a beautiful neuroaffirming way to describe the kind of experiences that we have with our very unique brains. Okay. Very non-pejorative, non-judgmental. Okay. So your nephew, what happened? He's a little baby. Mom's rocking him in the arms, right? What do we know about some of these kids in terms of their genetics? Their genetics structures their brain in a way so that the essential learning about self-regulation, the essential changes that are supposed to happen in this social engagement system don't occur. Like we know, for example, this is getting really deep, but let me put it this way. The ventral vagal nerve, it's called the vagal nerve because the vagus means wanderer, right? So it wanders from the head all the way down to your gut. And along the way, it's talking to your heart and it's talking to your lungs and it's talking to your stomach, and they're all tied together. And the brain has says motor aspects of it, that so it's telling the heart and lungs and gut what to do. And then there's sensory aspects of it, the afferent nerves that come back to the brain. So there's communication among all your body and your brain through the vagal nerve, other nerves as well, but this is a key one for what we're talking about. One of the things that nerve has to do is regulate heart rate and breathing, which are signs of how well the ventral vagal nerve is balancing our response to demand and our rest. It is this exquisite balance between these two systems that is carefully choreographed over years and years of tiny little experiences with caregivers that allow us to learn how to regulate ourselves. But we know from the research that the neurodivergent brains can't do this kind of regulation from the get-go. So mama holds you. You might get a little bit in terms of what you're trying to learn, how you're trying to shape the brain in those early formative years where the brain is pruning the first couple of years in that of life that strategic window. Then and it's building these pathways in the brain, these functional pathways in the brain. So what's happening for the neurotypical brain is these nice pathways are being laid down for self-regulation, initially primitive, but whatever, they build over time. But for the neurodivergent brain and neurodiverse brain, that doesn't happen. It remains less well regulated. And we'll talk about in just a second, what does that exactly mean? Less well regulated than the neurotypical brain. Okay, what does that look like? My baby's harder to comfort. My little kid puts their hands over their ears.
Yes.
They throw temper tantrums. They
Yes.
never learn to sleep adequately. Their feeding is weird. Their belly's upset more than the average kid, right? Remember ventral vagal nerve all the way down to the belly, right?
Yep.
All tied together. Kids with autism have more digestive issues. Why? Maybe because of the ventral vagal nerve, all right? And its impact on the gut. So, what does this mean in terms of dysregulation? What's not regulated? Number one is, and these are some of my guesses now, right? This is born of decades in the field, sort of being a, if you will, a gentleman scientist, right? My job is to help people in the field get better. I don't have the time and the luxury that you have within, academia to do the research, which is so essential to really understand a lot of this stuff. But I've made good guesses over the years. One of the things that we see for people who are neurodivergent is they're overloaded. Too many thoughts, ADHD freight train brain, a huge volume, a huge river of thoughts going through my heads all the time. When do you usually notice it? When I'm trying to go to sleep, when it gets quiet. And
Ah,
my prefrontal right? My prefrontal
yeah.
cortex is no longer regulating the flow of thoughts. And all of a sudden, a whole encyclopedia of thoughts shows up in my conscious awareness at 10:30 at night. And I can't go to sleep. Hence some of the poor sleep regulation. Thought overload, emotional overload. My mom says something to me and it's, a little bit critical. Well, I'm supposed to have this much of a response and I'm supposed to regulate back down and be able to deal with it. But I don't. It feels this big. And maybe that's where we see this, rejection sensitive dysphoria. It feels this big. And then I blow up and I scream and I run up to my room and I slam the door because I'm unable to regulate the amount of data, the amount of emotional data in my brain, and therefore respond appropriately socially with my world in an adaptive way. Sensory data, too much sound, too much light, tastes weird. I don't like the way this feels on my skin. Why? Because if we think about it as an iceberg, you're supposed to have in your conscious awareness the tip of the iceberg. And all that other data, sensory, physiologic, emotional, cognitive data, is supposed to be in the subconscious, right? The subcortical areas. You're not supposed to be aware of this stuff. But we are. If we're neurodivergent, our icebergs are flipped upside down. And we're getting 90% of the huge amount of data that's available to us as biological organisms running into our conscious awareness. Okay. And
Rick,
we, yeah,
go ahead.
please go. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to quickly say, and please don't lose your thought. I truly understand what you're saying because I watched this film 6 times over the
Wow.
weekend, life
Uh-huh.
animated from parents, these two parents of
Yeah.
Owen Suskind, who said exactly what you said.
Yeah.
And it took them years to figure it out.
Yes, yes. This is why I'm out here preaching this stuff, because to me this is the fundamental understanding of what neurodivergence is. Now we could go on and talk about the development of sort of the neurodivergent individual through childhood and into adulthood. That's a whole other discussion pertinent to what we're talking about too. But the point being here is, um, we have these kinds of dysregulations, huge amount of data, which I can't regulate well. Why? There's something that seems to be going on with the ventral vagal nerve. It's having some conversation with the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of the executive functions, right? Really quickly, executive functions. Can I initiate activities? Can I plan? Can I follow through? Can I focus? Can I shut down impulses that are inappropriate? So on and so forth. Everything we need to engage in adaptive behaviors, right, lives here in conversation with the rest of the brain. It's not all just here, in conversation with the rest of the brain. Somewhere in the discussion between the prefrontal cortex and the ventral vagal nerve, the brain is not doing an adequate job of regulating the amount of data and the nature of the data that's there. And we are overwhelmed as neurodivergent individuals as we try and approach the world. Let's bring this back to community, because that's what you wanted to talk about first.
Yes.
We see it most problematically with the dysregulations in autism. I don't have an intuitive sense. If I'm somebody with autism, I don't have an intuitive sense of the nuances of conversation, how to engage, how to continue the tennis match of conversation, how to build relationship. My brain doesn't have the intuitive ability to easily figure out how to build community. So how do I feel often? Isolated, an outsider. I get bullied because I act oddly, I'm quirky, right? So this is all driven by this fundamental biology, these fundamental dysregulations that are rooted in genetics. So we can't build community. ADHD kids are impulsive. I love them. Why? Because I'm an impulsive.
Well, you have a touch of
I
ADHD,
have a
don't
touch
you?
of ADHD, exactly. I get impulsive ADHD. So, but what happens? A group of kids is having a conversation, and you butt in, and you have no idea where anybody is in the conversation, and you don't care, and you're excited, and you're all over the place. And after a while, they're like, you don't fit in with us very well. And
Mm.
so, because of your social impulsiveness, you become the outsider, you become the butt of jokes, you become lonely. If we take this through the life cycle, this begins when you're little. Your disconnect with your caregivers and your peers and your community begins in infancy. That's how deep it is. And then you get into first grade and you can't connect with your peers. And then you get into the really beginning to be complex social world of middle school, which ought to be banned from life anyway, right? Just because the land of the gland, it's such a bizarre time of life. So, you know, so you get into middle school and you're even less adept because you haven't learned your elementary school level social skills yet. And now they've just bucked you up a developmental level. You don't get it. High school, you don't get it. You get into college and you go away to a 4-year college. You have absolutely no idea how to connect with your peer community in a way that'll help you feel safe, connected, taken care of, loved, right? Where is that person then? Alone, anxious, depressed, less skilled in some ways in terms of what's needed to be able to engage in the demands of adult life, very distant from the community. Okay. So, bringing this all back, for people who are neurodivergent, it's true for all of us, but particularly for people who are neurodivergent, or for that matter, anybody who has any kind of psychological or even physical differences from the norm,
Yep.
to feel safe, comfortable, seen, validated, not judged, accepted, is critical to developing a life that's satisfying, that's empowering, where you can live out your passions, where you can connect with people. Having community is critical for us in order to not be marginalized people.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yes,
So,
and that is the most important when you graduate from high school, because that network that you are engaged in high school, the classroom, you're in a classroom of kids every day. You may
yeah,
have some activities afterwards that you can engage in. That all goes away after high school. And Rick, you can speak to this, please, and that is parents are exhausted. Parents have gotten their kids through high school. Now what? Well, they stay in the house.
they stay in the house.
Pick
So,
it up from there.
okay. That'll be another half hour discussion right there. So let me jump in with this stuff. Okay. So there's a few elements of that. What happens in high school that makes life doable for, let's say, the ADHD brain, or what we call the ADHD brain, autism and ADHD, because that package is there for a lot of people. You don't have autism without, at least I haven't seen autism without the executive dysfunction components. Okay. So it
Right.
all comes together. So let's say the ADHD, the ADHD brain. All right. Why am I able to get through high school? Why do my parents even believe that I should attempt a 4-year college in another town? High school is highly structured. I may have been lucky enough to have a small group of friends who give me a sense of connection, support me, and who, when I missed that, Joey, did she tell us that we have a test next week? Yeah, we have a test next week. Okay, what's it going to be on? Those little connections that happen in school among peers that help support each other in the academic work, that's there in high school. Mom and dad are there. You come home from school, do your homework, settle in. Enough time for it's 10 o'clock. We're done with the videos. You're going to sleep. I'm going to feed you well, right? You need to get out and exercise. So the structure, the consistency, the self care, all these things that build good executive function are available in spades in a home environment in high school. Now, yes, the parents are tired because I'm getting tired just thinking about the amount of work that's required to do this kind of stuff, right? We've all gone through this with our own children. It's exhausting. Kudos to every single parent of a neurodivergent child who themselves are probably neurodivergent, right? Because the genetic link is very powerful. So they're struggling to regulate their own lives while they have this little creature that they have to regulate at the same time. It's a
Yes.
tough job, it's a tiring job. And you know, I want to say that oftentimes what we see, and I don't want to talk in extremes, there's a lot of people who are able to pull together those elements and create an atmosphere where the neurodivergent child is sufficiently well supported that they can do what they need to do in life. Okay.
Hmm.
And oftentimes we see families that are just struggling because the parents themselves haven't worked through their own traumas, small t trauma from neurodivergence or large t trauma, and the kids are really struggling. The parents are tired. They can't push their kid out of the house because they know they won't do well, but they don't want him in the house because they're a pain in the neck because they're all screaming every day at each other because of emotional dysregulation. And people haven't really learned how to speak clearly what their feelings are and negotiate well with each other. So, um, so the kids, but the parents have seen enough. Oh, you got some decent grades. Let's apply to a small school in another state and send you there. One that might have a good, a good program for kids with neurodivergence. And they go, and then they're isolated, and they don't know how to make friends. And typically, the school programs aren't there to be full support systems
Wait
for
a
young
minute. They're
kids.
isolated because I just think I got the connection. We've
Yeah,
taken that structure that's been in
yes,
place
yes,
until graduation from high school that's comfortable, that's familiar, where
yeah,
we know the responses, we know the level of expectation. And
right.
now we're living by ourselves in a whole different group of people. We don't know what the structure is anymore. We may have to create our own structure.
From a brain that doesn't know how to create structure, right? So this is a bad analogy, but stick with me anyway, because it implies disability in a way that I don't want to imply, but it conveys an idea which is helpful. You break your leg. You can't walk. You got to be in a wheelchair for 3 months. Okay. How do you get up to the porch and into the house? Can't take the steps. Somebody who's thoughtful builds a ramp for you, right? No problem. You got the accommodations, you got the scaffolding that makes it doable given what your strengths and limitations are, right? Same thing. High school, you got a whole scaffolding, you got a ramp for how you do life at that age. Then you hit the transition to college. And everybody says, look how well you did in high school. Let's take away the ramp. And your leg is still broken and you're still in a wheelchair. What the heck are you going to do in terms of getting up?
Because your leg will always be broken to a certain extent. Is that right?
Yes. And if we look at the biology of that, the reason that we begin to see in the mid and late 30s with the neurodivergent kids some improvement, just sort of historical, if you will, they seem to, even without interventions, a lot of times these kids will start to get better. Why? Because this part of the brain is the last part of the brain to develop. The prefrontal cortex, which is governing the executive functions, has to get myelinated, which means that the nerves have to build their fatty sheaths, which makes communication between nerve cells very effective and very efficient. That doesn't happen for the average brain until the mid 20s. It's a
Oh, oh,
it's a 6 year delay, 4 to 6 year delay for the ADHD brain. So
okay.
I always say to parents, be careful. Your child going away to college requires a level of executive function that's huge. And it requires the whole developmental resources that the neurotypical person has gathered and your kid has not. So they need good executive function and they need good developmental skills, and then they can make the transition. And your kid has neither. Not only that, their brain that they're really going to have to rely on in a way that they never did before. If they're 18, their prefrontal cortex is in terms of neurologic functioning at the level of a middle schooler. Well, who in their right mind would send a 13-year-old person away to a state university in another state and expect them to be able to survive? This is why, for better or worse, we have the program that we do. Because I
And this
can't
is
tell you.
why, for better or worse, a lot of parents keep the kids in the house and don't
Absolutely.
attempt that jump to college.
Yes. But
Okay.
how, yes, exactly. And then I would ask, but how many parents at that point have the faintest clue about how to make that transition? Not their fault, but
No,
who,
we need information. We
what,
need resources, which is where people like you come in.
right. We need the resources. We need what's the biology? What are realistic expectations? What are the specific interventions that you can use both for the kid and for you as parents? Because you need a lot of support. Parents are very relieved when you begin saying to them, I'm going to help you. And not that you're doing a bad job parenting your child, but for this stage, I'm going to help you become more effective at being the parent of a transitional, in this regard, from high school to adulthood, transitional young adult, older teen, young adult. I'm going to help you become a better parent. And you get the tears from people because it's such a relief because they've been struggling for so long with
Yes,
this.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
and so as we're going to move into now Thrive Emerge, but I just want
okay.
to say once again to everybody, your job isn't over, parents. You have to pay attention to putting your children in a social network so that they can continue to use their brain and executive function to know how to work in community. You do have to go that extra mile. And Rick, my sister, the mother of John, she
Uh-huh.
said when he graduated from high school, and my sister was very active in school for all of
Mm,
her kids, it was very difficult to get parents to like form a group because they're going to have to
yes,
drive the
yes,
kids, form a group so the kids could keep socializing. I don't know why,
right.
but it existed. So now let's talk about what you do to address everything you just presented to us.
So, okay. So Thrive Emerge is the name of the overall center. And the program within Thrive Emerge is called the Village. And the Village is, Judith, you described a little bit earlier, this intensive outdoor, peer-based, what we call a therapeutic community, kind of distinguishing it from traditional outpatient mental health. So a traditional outpatient mental health is, and not faulting it because it's perfectly good for a lot of issues, right? You see your therapist once a week, maybe twice a week. If you have more significant problems, perhaps you're in a group. You see your psychiatrist once a month, once every 3 months for a little medication tweak. And that's enough for you to deal with the kinds of emotional and mental health problems that you might have. Okay. What we started to notice a couple decades ago was at that time it was young men with ADHD and a number of other conditions that often go along with, bipolar, depression, anxiety, alcohol use, that kind of thing. These guys were not transitioning. They'd be with us a year, 2 years, 3 years, same problems over and over and over again. And we finally said, you know what? This methodology of traditional outpatient mental health is for some reason not working for this population. Now, at that time, we had no understanding of, what I've just talked about, sort of where does neurodivergence come from and what are the interventions you need to deal with it more effectively. But we said, well, it's interesting talking about community. Our clinical hunch was they're so isolated. Let's just put them together in a group and see what happens. And we did. And things began to shift a little bit because what happens in a group? All of a sudden, you're talking to people who get you, don't judge you, support you, will be honest with the feedback about where you're doing well and where you're struggling, right? And when you feel that way, that supported, you start to feel safe. Well, where do we learn and grow? Not when we're threatened, when we're safe.
Yeah.
So community provides the opportunity for psychological and I'd even say spiritual safety if we're walking down that road that allows us to then finally acquire the emotional and life skills that we need in order to make that transition more successfully, right?
Yeah.
It is the single most important component of what has now evolved over about 20 years into this Village program. So just a brief description without getting into the logistics too much. We have the young adults. Sometimes we lovingly call them the young adult kids, which the acronym for that is YACS. And because we give each other a lot of crap all the time because that's just part of the humor and joy of being with one another in a setting like this. We say, it's appropriate because you kind of smell like yak sometimes. So they laugh and they throw some barb back in my direction, and believe me, I get a lot of it. I'm perfectly happy to receive it. All done playfully and lovingly. And these are wonderful, wonderful people. I will say we had this is a bit of an aside, but we had a meeting the other day. When people come to you or when you're sort of an outsider to a neurodivergent person's life, you see the problems. They're not in school. They're at home. They're using video games 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. They're smoking too much weed or maybe drinking. They haven't completed school. They don't have any friends. You see all the problems. All you see is, oh my God, this kid is just a bag full of problems. The other day, I'm sitting with a group of our young adults who had to provide some pretty serious feedback to another one of the young adults who committed a significant transgression of the rules of the group around safety, and violated safety and trust. And I watched these kids with, again, high functioning, but still autistic kids struggle with emotional expression, emotional awareness, social connection, giving deep, thoughtful, heartfelt responses to this other individual, caring and warm and gentle, direct but gentle. And to see their capabilities as human beings. I mean, why not, right? But to see that in a whole group of 15 of them, consistently delivering this compassionate feedback to a peer was a very powerful, to say heartwarming really sort of underplays the importance of something like that. But it gets back to the idea of what can happen when you bring people together how they can begin to shine. I always talk about this notion of divine spark. It's not an idea that I created, but I love the meaning of it, that we all have a little bit of, however we think of God or whoever it is that runs this whole show, right? We all have a little bit of that inside of us. Community encourages us to feel safe enough to allow our divine spark into the world,
Yes.
because we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And in vulnerability is flexibility and openness and creativity. And from there, you can do anything. That is the source of healing right there. And if somebody said to me, I was talking to a guy the other day who's very, very resistant about getting into the program. Young man, he's 18, and we get this all the time, right? And he's talking about all the things we do and the interventions, blah, blah, blah. I said, look, forget all of that stuff. I said, there's one thing that I want you to hear about. What is most important in this program is relationship. I want you to at least try to be around a group of people who want to care about you, who will believe in you, who will help you learn to trust and open your heart again, who will, and here's the four-letter word you're not supposed to use in therapy, right? Who will love.
I know, love. I knew it was going to be the L word.
The L word, right?
Yes.
That is the yes, that's the root of the healing. You take people, you bring them together, you love them up, you laugh with them, you cry with them, you give them a hard time for they're not doing well, you give them lots of positive feedback, and lo and behold, they turn into a group of young adults who can deliver incredibly thoughtful, passionate, compassionate feedback to peers.
Yes.
So anyway, that's sort of the ethos of what we do. We have, yeah, please
Age
go ahead.
age
Yeah.
range, 16, 18 to 33. Give us the age range, Rick.
The teen group, which is separate from the other part of the
Mm,
village, teen is about 15 to 18, so late high school, right?
okay.
And then the village itself is 18 to, we actually have somebody in there right now who's 49 now. He has a relationship with me for many, many years, but he's a
Okay.
struggling to launch adult. And he's really benefited by being in the program. But most of the people were in their 20s, a few folks in their early 30s. And parents will say to me, but an 18-year-old and a 33-year-old, they're so different. And I said, unfortunately, they're not. They haven't
Unfortunately,
developed,
right.
right?
Well, but even in in the neurotypical world, you will see friend, platonic, an older
Mhm.
person with a younger person. They just seem to connect. Somehow they connect. I mean, I won't divulge my age, but I am ancient. I do have two friends that are 20 years younger than me. They're older, and we connect. We have the same interests. Now, I wanted to say one other thing, and then I want to go more into Thrive Emerge and where you are and how people get there. But
Yeah.
an example of what you just said. So, my nephew, John, he'll be
Mhm.
40 in April.
Mhm.
High functioning learning disabled. It's the only way I can talk about him. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are not his jams.
Yeah.
But compassion is,
Mhm.
being kind is, helping people is, dealing with senior citizen is his jam. So anyway, the family went on a vacation. My sister, my nephew, and my niece, my sister's oldest daughter, who has two children, one of them being Down syndrome, who is an adolescent. She was like 11 or 12 at the time. Bearing in mind, my nephew was 38 at the time. That's a big difference, right? And they're different issues,
Mhm.
different special needs. So we're at Disney World and he took over. He
Mhm.
took over
Mhm.
Becca's socializing. He connected with her. He took
That's
care of her.
wonderful. That's
And
so neat.
and
Yeah.
that really goes against you can't mix people. Oh, no, no, no. You have to have all autistic together or all Downs. No, you don't.
No,
Right?
you
No, you don't.
no, no, you don't. You have people together, and you create an environment, the holding tank of that community. You create an environment that says again and again and again, which we say it out loud all the time to people. This is a place where no one is judged. However you show up is fine. You need to wander off in the woods while we're all together for the first 3 months of your being here. Nobody cares. It's not we don't care about you, but that's what you need to do. Or you're in a group, but you're not ready to talk, or you talk too much and you're a pain in the butt. Whatever, we'll give you feedback about it. However you show up is fine. So you bring people together. And this is particularly in this day and age without getting too much into politics. We need to remember how much we need each other, how much we need to love each other,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whatever our uniqueness might be, whatever our differences might be, that's what makes us rich. That's what gives us a joy of coming together in those very complex communities, right? Those diverse communities. So
So
yeah.
let's talk about Thrive. Let's talk
Okay.
about where you're located,
Okay.
how to apply. Let's talk about all
Okay, so we are in between Baltimore and Washington, closer to Baltimore, in an area that's Catonsville, Ellicott City, Oella. So, which probably doesn't mean much to a lot of people unless you live there. And we get together in this park, which is actually nearby my house. And we started there during COVID because of the need for still gathering, but in a setting where we weren't going to be infecting each other by being in a closed group. So we
that.
went to the
Right.
outdoors, and it actually worked out very well. Um, if people are into, we draw people primarily from DMV, from DC, Maryland, Virginia area, but really broadly from sort of central Maryland, and really even more broadly from mid-Atlantic, because the program is unique enough that it's people say, where can you do this in New York? Can you do this in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware? We've drawn from Virginia. People from across the country have said, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I want to move to your area so my kid can be in your program. It's just, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, in a way, I wish that weren't the case. I wish that there were these kinds of programs around the country for people to access. So if people are
So hold
interested,
on. So logistically, hang in there.
yes.
Logistically, there's no overnight stays, which is why primarily you get people from your immediate area that can drive their child to you and pick them up at
Yeah,
the end of the day.
right.
So people from other states then just have to Airbnb it or relocate for X amount of months. How long is that?
I'll walk through all this.
Okay.
So the idea of not necessarily being a residential program, other than setting up a residential program is a whole business in and of itself. So that's another discussion for another day. But really, sort of the therapeutic reason for it is our kids go home and live with their parents. So they are learning their skills in the real world, and we're working with their
Ah,
parents. You send somebody, and I'm not bad, wilderness programs, they have a place. I love them. They're great. But you send them away. The parents might see the kid a few times, come out for a visit, their family day or whatever. They come home, nothing's changed. Day by day by day, we text the parents, email the parents, call the parents. We're in touch with them. We're giving them feedback about the kids. They're giving us feedback about the kids. We're modifying our interventions based on what we're understanding at that time. We say to the parents, this is not a body shop. Do not expect to come and drop your kid off and we will do a little polishing and turn them back to you. Not happening. You are our patients or clients as much as your kids are. Are you ready to do the work? This is going to require some work. It's tough stuff.
Okay,
So
so
the parent,
that's unique, Rick,
yeah, you
as
got
you
it.
know, but I want to tell everybody. So Rick's program not only includes the individuals, but
Yeah.
the parents,
Yes,
ongoing
absolutely.
community of family. Keep going.
Yes, very much so. So they'll come in and our contact number, I don't know if you want to give it to them. Should
Oh
I
yeah,
give it?
no, go ahead. I'm going
Okay.
to put it in the show notes, but people like to take notes.
All right. So anyway, so the contact number is 410-740-3240. And you call up, you say, I heard this kook, Rick Silver, talking on this podcast. I'm kind of interested, right? and what they'll do is they'll link you up with Mary Jo Puglisi. She is our first person. She's wonderful. She's great. Mary Jo was an educator in the Baltimore Archdiocese system for about 30 years and is also a clinician. So she brings us wonderful mix of executive function and other clinical skills to bear with these kids. But she's the first person that you'll run into, and she'll screen you and talk to you about the program. So that's how people initially get into us, is through that. You can also go to the website, which is if I remember our current one. Um,
Wait, I'll tell you. Where is it?
okay,
It's
I think
not
it's
thriveemerge.com.
.com. Yeah, thriveemerge.com. I'm always mixing up the website with
Yeah.
my email. So yeah, thriveemerge.com. And
Yes.
you can go there and that'll direct you to us as well.
Hmm.
So we come in, we do an initial evaluation. It's fairly extensive. It's not a neuropsych eval or psychoed eval. That's a different kind of thing done by neuropsychologists. But we do a very extensive clinical evaluation, meet with the family as a family evaluation. I meet for sort of the medication, but also just getting a sense of why are you stuck, at this point. MJ meets with them to do some of the basic clinical diagnostic work. So we have three clinicians working over many hours to do the initial evaluation, meet with the families, propose a program. They come into the program. We always say to the kid, it's a step by step. We always say, look, you don't know me from Adam. I'm just another practitioner telling you I'm going to help you with your life, right? I have no reason that I think that you should believe me at all. Other than I've done it a lot, and I think I do a pretty decent job, and my staff does. So, but I want you to try. Will you come out and visit us once? So they do that. Oh, that's kind of an interesting place to be. They're out here and they're digging and they're planting flowers in the spring and they're gathering apples off the trees in the fall. And this looks nice and they're fun and they laugh. And so they do a visit and we do the evaluation. And I say after the evaluation, look, do you know us well enough at this point that you're at least willing to try to be with us for 1 month? That's it. That's all I can expect of you.
Oh,
1 month.
okay. That's good.
Do a trial month, because I said, I'm not even going to try and convince you of anything, because I will almost guarantee that at the end of that month, you're going to want to stay. I don't have to say anything. You will want to be here because you will, in your heart, understand this is a place that will accept you and help move you on to the next phase. It'll fit for you. So I don't have to convince you of anything. Just show up, experience it, and then make a decision. Now, what does that mean? Sir, it's not a 1 month program, right?
Right.
We say to the parents, look, you've had like 20 years. We need at least one, realistically. That whole time is not a highly intense program. There's step downs along the way, depending upon what people need. But I would say probably 6 months, a good 6 months, they're there, even to 9 months is a fairly intensive program. They come out to the village. We also call it the farm because the farm is the first part where they're doing the physical labor, and the second part of the day is the groups. So they come out on Tuesday and Thursday out there, and then we do remote work with them and the family the rest of the week. So therapy,
Okay.
some in management, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Um, and what we see, the thing that we're really looking for, the parents are understandably, and we are too, you're looking for, can they get a job? Can they go back to school? Can they build friendships? All those sort of instrumental things. And I say to the parents, but that's not really what we're looking for. That'll happen if what shifts for them is their motivation, what we call their intrinsic motivation. Have they got enough connection, enough sense of their own competence, enough sense of their own autonomy? And these are all borrowed from social determination theory, right? That those help them become intrinsically motivated to look to the future, to begin to shape their lives in an active, engaged way. That is what launch is. Launch doesn't mean I'm sending your kid to Harvard. It doesn't mean they're going to be a lawyer. It means that their hearts and minds and skills have shifted enough that they're more ready than they were to take on life face to face with a lot of support. And we have kids who've been with us for decades, right?
Yeah.
Not intensely, but they're there. One of our guys who's he's now a social worker. He couldn't finish his undergraduate work. This is a young man who came to us and is, without going into all the details, there's a lot of trauma in the family, and he was not at the time diagnosed with autism, so there's all the emotional dysregulation. He couldn't even finish college. This kid finished college when he came to us, went on, got a master's degree in social work, and is now doing his own social work practice. But he still sees us years later. Why? Because we're the community that holds him, in addition to the community he's built outside of this as well. we're still the community that holds him. So people stay for those sorts of
Hmm.
ongoing services for a long time too.
Just like we have our core group of friends, if we're lucky enough,
Yeah.
the person we were friends with in elementary school, we're still friends with. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Or the friends that we make incrementally along the way at various
Yes.
stages in our lives. Some of
Yes.
them do stay in our lives. So I can understand why they come back. You know,
Yeah.
I wrote a few words down as I was reading through everything on the website. I put love at the very top, community, safety, freedom of expression,
Mhm.
big deal for all of us, but especially this community,
Yeah.
integrated life,
Yeah.
resulting in self love, self worth,
Yep.
pride, and
Yes.
contentment.
Yes. Exactly.
That's what I
Yes.
pulled from your everything I read.
Thank you. And you are ready to do your doctoral dissertation on social determination theory. Because you named it all right there.
God, I
Here's
need to feel smarter.
right. But thank you. Thank you for pulling those out. I mean, you really did capture sort of the essence of what we're trying to do. And I'm talking about social determination theory. I just wanted to say we were backwards. Sometimes people will start with a theory and build interventions based on the theory. We built everything based on our clinical intuition, our gut. We just tried things again and again and again over years. We saw what worked. And it was only in retrospect that I did my sort of detective work and my, gentleman scientist work that I could see, oh, that's where this all came in. That's why that fits with this theory. Here's where polyvagal fits in and social determination fits in and so on and so forth. So,
You
yeah.
know, that's interesting, Rick, that you talked about going with your gut. Now, you come from a highly credentialed life,
Hmm.
MD, public health um, degree. You come from that life, but I go back to, I'm so happy. Now, first of all, I talked to you a couple weeks ago, read everything on your website, and then I watched this film on autism over the weekend. And
Hmm.
their parents, no clinical experience whatsoever, just regular parents loving their
Right.
child, wanting to see what they could do because all the doctors wrote them off. This was 20 years ago,
Yeah.
all or no, 30
Yes.
years ago. They didn't know enough. They wrote them off. Put your child in an institution. They'll ruin your life. You'll have no life. And the parents just are like, no. We will
Right.
not accept that. We need to find out about autism. We need to get inside. They called it the prism of autism and learn how to communicate with their son. And it was
Yes.
gut. That's what they followed their gut. They watched their son's behavior. What turns their son on? What
Right.
did they do as a family? They watched Disney movies. He
Right.
communicated in Disney language the
Yes.
feelings that he had. That was his only means of communication. And he felt isolated until, I guess, that noise in the head, Rick, the ventral nerve. Things
Yeah.
do kind of come together and it quiets down, doesn't it, in
Yes.
the head?
For a lot of people over time with support, with skill,
Okay.
with self-regulation support, and because the natural development, it calms down. Yeah.
Okay. So here might be the biggest question of all after all of this wonderful knowledge, and that is affordability. Do you
Hmm.
work with people on affordability? What is this like?
That is a yes and a question. So we have over the years figured out that we can't do insurance because we can't do this program on insurance. They will not reimburse the way we've structured the program. Now that's an oversimplification because we do have part of our business that works with people around getting reimbursement for specific parts of it. But a large part of what you'll do is we'll say you'll probably get 20% reimbursed and the other 80% has to be out of pocket. Okay. And that's always been a challenge because what we would like to be able to do is evolve a program that's more widely available to people that delivers these same kind of services. But we have to remember this is a very intensive program. It requires a huge amount of staff presence. We have a team of about 10 clinicians and educators who are working together. We meet 4 to 5 hours a week just to talk about the patients.
Mm,
So you know that that's not going to be cheap. So now that being said, we will work with people and they'll sometimes say, that's too much. We can't do that. We'll say, okay, let's do something. What is workable for you? What is affordable? Let's start somewhere. We would like them to be out at the farm slash the village because that's such a central part of it. If we can, let them come out for one day. Let them come out for half a day instead of, 2 full days.
Hmm.
Let's cut that down. Maybe we'll have a little bit less of the intensive communication services. That'll save you some money. Let's try something and see how they'll do with a less intensive program.
Okay.
But, to be fair and to be honest, it's the kids who are involved, the young adults who are involved in the most intensive care that actually tend to get better faster over time.
Absolutely. And so then
Yeah.
I would add, as a layperson,
Mm,
that start saving money as they're younger and
that's
prepare for programs like yours that
right.
will polish everything off, that will end the part of their lives that was structured up until graduation from high school, but
Yes.
let you move into this next part to launch them into adulthood and into the larger community of life.
Yes. And there's a line that I'll use often when I'm doing talks along those lines of saving the money. And I'll say, look, I'm a parent of neurodivergent daughters. I have 3 daughters and 2 are neurodivergent. And I said, you have to be prepared to be in the saddle for a long time. You're not getting rid of them when they're 18. We're still doing EF coaching with our 37-year-old daughter, right? And she's doing fabulously, and she needs the EF coaching. And you have to be prepared to spend money. It will cost you tens of thousands of dollars to get your, neurodivergent child to where you'd like them to be, and might not be exactly where you dreamed they would be, but it'll be more functional than they are right now. It will cost a lot of money. Now I'm gonna make the error of actually quoting specific prices here and making some comparisons so people can be realistic. We're very, very direct with people about costs. Our costs are probably about $6,000 a month, right? For the full program. Compare this to wilderness and substance abuse programs that are about $30,000.
Oh
Now,
my.
I'm not saying 6,000 is cheap, and you
But
but for very
30 is different.
there is different, and it's a reason it's a pro. You have to, if people say right off the bat, well, it's too much money. I'd say, look, if you think we have something that could be of value to you, at least talk to us and see if we could help you. Maybe there's ways we can help you remotely if you're in another state. Maybe you're local and we could help you. Maybe there's ways that we can work out pricing that will work better for you, but at least look at it. And if nothing else, get an idea from us. What is it that you might like to do, whether or not you go with us, what you might like to have available for your kid in terms of their treatment. Do a consult with us. We can help lay out a treatment plan with other people in the community. There's many good neurodivergent practitioners in the community. You don't have to come to us, but use us. Look at our newsletter, read the book, call us. We do free 15-minute consults with people. If you want more support, we can do paid consults with you to help set up treatment. So we're very, very eager to help people build their expertise in neurodivergent, figure out what they can do as parents to help their kids. However we can do that, we'll do it. And if you can come and be in our program, we love it. But we do a lot of public speaking and a lot of uh, giving away free materials to people. Oftentimes we'll give away the book for free. We now have workbooks for parents and teachers and also for parents who are dealing with alcohol detox. Part of this, we have an alcohol detox program. I'm sorry, I misspoke completely. Electronics detox program.
Oh, right. I thought that was interesting.
Yes.
Here's what I found by working with people just through this show in
Yes.
the neurodivergent community, and that is they're very giving. They share. Okay, maybe you can't exactly do what I'm offering, but let me point you in another direction that may be able to work with your resources and where you're at. Very open, very giving. So, anybody listening to this, do not let money be an issue.
You, you,
Move,
you,
get information.
Yeah, don't. I mean, you might not be able to do the Cadillac program. That's fine, but we do a lot of providing free resources and talk to us, pick our brains. We're willing to do that. We're willing to engage with you
Yeah.
however we can. It's a tough journey if you're not working with people who've walked it already. It's a tough journey.
Yes, and didn't I read on the website that a lot of your clinicians are also diagnosed?
All of us
Yeah.
to a person, from ADHD to autism to ADHD, whatever you want to call it. So we have a lot of fun with each other because of that. Our staff meeting can be quite uproarious because of the impulsive ADHD that's in the room. I'm
Oh,
the
that's
main
so funny.
perpetrator of that.
That is so funny. Rick, this has been delightful. So I want to
Thank
come
you.
back because
Mhm.
there's so much more to cover, but I wanted to get people started and introduce them to you and Thrive Emerge
Yes,
so that we can grab people as soon as possible and start dispersing the resources to help
please.
them.
Yes. Yes. And I'll let me say the phone number once again, 410-740-3240. Please call us and ask us what could you possibly do to help me in my situation as a parent with a neurodivergent kid, and we'll see what we can do.
God, that makes me feel so good. Thank you.
Good,
Thank you so
good.
much for everything that you've done. I
Judith,
hope
thank you. Yeah,
listen, it's been my pleasure. I cannot tell you
yeah.
how much fun I'm having doing this show, meeting
Oh,
people.
yes,
It warms my heart, and
yeah,
we're in a tough spot right now in this country, and we're all trying to do our best to move forward in the best way possible.
yeah,
This community gives me hope for
yes,
humanity.
yes, yes, absolutely. Nicely put. I
Hope
agree.
for humanity.
Yes, yes. Hope for humanity. Very important at this
We may
time.
have to title this episode Hope for Humanity.
I love it. And Judy, thank you for doing what you do too. It's so valuable to be bringing these resources to the community. So
Saved
thank
my,
you.
well, you're welcome. Saved my life, saved
Yeah.
my happiness. And so I look forward to this every single day. So I
Good.
hope this has helped all of you. Every episode is for you and for your child. And I will end as I began. In the world of special needs, we all need each other. Talk to you next week.